If you've played FF6, you'll know that summons, or espers, are an integral part of the game's plot. Likewise, FF8's Guardian Forces and FF9's Eidolons are critical to each entry's world and lore. It's a bit odd then that FF7 makes no real effort to incorporate these magical monsters into its world building. The red materia used to call them forth are, like every other orb in the game, distillations of the planet's knowledge and memories. But that tells us little in the way of what these creatures are and where they come from. What's more, FF7 is the only mainline Final Fantasy game that features summonable monsters but never pits players against one. With so much focus on human drama and the broader themes of life, loss, and acceptance, you could forgive FF7 for scrubbing summons from the plot. But as it turns out, an earlier iteration of the game did make an attempt to give these beasts some backstory. To find it, we'll have to visit the Mural Chamber, which lies at the heart of the Temple of the Ancients. It's here that Sephiroth fully explains his ambitions and the tool with which he intends to achieve them: Meteor, an ancient spell of unimaginable destruction. The paintings on the room's walls portend its casting and the ruin that will result should the black materia fall into the wrong person's hands. Still unaware of his role in Sephiroth's scheme, Cloud finds himself on the edge of a mental breakdown, but manages to pull out of it. Not long after, the room begins to shake violently. Cloud shouts Sephiroth's name, suspecting he's the source of the tremors, but Sephiroth says otherwise. We then launch into a battle against the Red Dragon, which may or may not prove a total pushover. Upon defeating it, we return to the Mural Chamber. There, a shiny prize awaits us: the Bahamut Summon Materia. At first glance, this sequence doesn't stick out too much, but closer examination raises some questions. Why all the build-up before this random mini-boss? Isn't it just a palette swap of the dragon enemy in Nibelheim? And why does Sephiroth seem so amused when it appears, as though we're in for some big, unexpected challenge? Like so many of FF7's minor mysteries, the answer lies in unused text. As it happens, Sephiroth originally had a lot more to say about the upcoming encounter. Back before the Ancients were decimated by Jenova and their civilization dwindled, another race of beings existed alongside them. They were pure monsters of natural form that grew up bathed in the light of Mako. At a certain point, some of these beasts would seal their life force in orbs of materia, altering themselves for eternity. Aerith is quick to catch on to what Sephiroth is saying. The monsters in question are none other than summons. According to Sephiroth, the enemies guarding the temple are beasts who've endured since the time of the Ancients, crystallized forever in the form of materia. They're far more fit to inhabit the planet than our lowly protagonists. Sephiroth leaves off with a vague warning of the danger we're about to face, after which we're thrown into battle as usual. With this added context, you may now notice the relief on the far wall of the battle arena doesn't look a whole lot like the Red Dragon. If anything, it looks more like Bahamut, Final Fantasy's flagship dragon summon, and indeed, it's Bahamut's summon materia we receive at the end of the battle. The implication seems to be that the enemy we just faced is a summon. We think it's reasonable to conclude this boss battle initially would have featured Bahamut instead of the Red Dragon, but development constraints led to a simple palette swap being used instead. Had this been the case, FF7 would have maintained the series' tradition of battling at least one summonable monster. Incidentally, Bahamut is one of only 3 summon materia implied to drop from an enemy. Maybe you can recall the others. The first is Ifrit, which appears on the floor of the cargo ship after beating Jenova Immersion, aka Jenova Birth, aka Jenova's right arm. The second is Alexander, which you get after defeating the Snow Woman on the Great Glacier. It might be tempting to read into these examples, but we should note that materia placement in FF7 wasn't always the subject of deep deliberation. According to scenario writer Kazushige Nojima, there were so many to include that planners eventually just started plopping summon materia down willy-nilly. But let's return to that scrap speech in the Mural Chamber. While it answers some burning questions about the flow of the final scene, it raises just as many more. Namely, why is Sephiroth the one to deliver this lore dump? Why does he care about the nature of summons? And why does he think they're worthier of the planet than humans like Cloud? Recall that Sephiroth was himself raised amid the glow of abundant Mako. Unlike summons, however, which are pure monsters of natural form, Sephiroth was created artificially. His exposure to Mako was mediated by humans, and so to him would represent something shameful and unclean. This changed, however, when Sephiroth fell into the Mount Nebel reactor. Instead of dissolving into the lifestream along with his flesh, Sephiroth's will persisted and steeped itself in the unadulterated flow of Mako. When, after some time, Sephiroth began to reassemble his body, he did so inside a giant crystal of energy, what FF7's early development documents call the ultimate materia. It's no wonder then why Sephiroth might feel some kinship or even reverence for these ancient beasts. They represent the sort of pure natural monster he could never be, until he died and was reborn, that is. The uncut mural chamber also goes some way to explain Sephiroth's strange connection with Bahamut in the compilation and remake trilogy. Speaking of which, it's interesting to see how this scrapped lore from the Temple of the Ancients holds up with later entries in the franchise. Like the OG, Remake and Rebirth are light on details when it comes to summons. Chadley offers some intel on each creature, including a rundown of local legends, but never answers fundamental questions about why and how they came to be summons. The most pivotal lore we get might come from Shiva's bestiary entry in FF7 Remake. Evidently, this summon takes the form of a queen from ages past who once staunched the planet's wound with ice. As a result, its northern reaches remain covered in permafrost. There's no doubt this refers to the injury inflicted by Genova's arrival 2 millennia ago. We know that the task of healing the planet's wound was undertaken by the Cetra still alive at that time. It would follow then that they enlisted Shiva's aid to avert the world's destruction. This sounds similar to whatever deal they struck with summons to protect the black materia in the OG. And indeed, Rebirth makes a nod to Sephiroth's scrapped speech in intel entries for the enemies that prowl the Temple of the Ancients. However, it's clear these beasts aren't summons. Rather, they're creatures the Cetra saved from extinction and bred to serve as sentinels. The Red Dragon, for its part, is described as an enormous worm that's sworn itself to guarding the temple's halls. It's hard to predict if Part 3 of the Remake trilogy will reveal anything more on this matter. With so much other content to cover, it seems likely summons will remain a minor part of FF7's plot. But for those who've had their fill of primals, astrals, and icons, that might not be a bad thing. Thanks for watching this video, and extra thanks to all our wonderful backers. If you'd like to join the club and help ensure we can keep making content, be sure to follow the Patreon link down below in the description.